He approached slowly, the hair on the back of his neck prickling. The place felt wrong, but the promise of shelter and possibly supplies was too tempting to ignore. His Glock stayed at the ready as he climbed the creaking steps to the porch, his boots kicking up a thin layer of dust. The door hung slightly ajar, and he nudged it open with the barrel of his gun. Inside, the air was stale but not putrid, a rarity in a world where decay was the dominant scent. The furniture was intact, though cloaked in thick layers of dust as if the place had been frozen in time. He stepped inside, his every movement careful. The house was eerily silent, the only sound the faint creak of the floorboards under his weight. No claw marks marred the walls, no feathers or fur littered the corners. It was as if no living thing had dared to enter. As he moved deeper into the house, his unease grew. The farmhouse wasn't just untouched, it was preserved, like a diorama of the world before. A family photo still hung on the wall, its colors faded but the smiles intact. A cup sat on the kitchen counter, its contents evaporated, but the rim still showing the ghost of a stain. He frowned, his eyes narrowing. In a world where survival demanded constant motion, who would leave a home so intact? And why? The faint sound of rustling came from the attic above. His grip on the Glock tightened as he tilted his head, listening. It could be the wind, or it could be something else. He had a decision to make, investigate or barricade himself in for the night. Either way, the house was not as abandoned as it seemed. The attic stairs creaked under his weight, the sound unnervingly loud in the stillness of the farmhouse. He kept his Glock raised as he climbed, the faint rustle he'd heard earlier gnawing at the edge of his nerves. The air in the attic was stale and hot, thick with dust motes that swirled in his flashlight's beam. The space was cluttered with forgotten relics, a rocking chair draped in cobwebs, boxes with peeling labels, and a cracked mirror propped against the far wall. Then, he saw it, a fan mounted near a small, grime-covered window. It turned in slow, erratic jerks, its motor humming faintly. Electricity. His pulse quickened. Electricity was a rarity, a luxury in the post-treaty world. He stepped closer, shining his flashlight around the attic. A frayed cord snaked along the floor, disappearing through a small hole in the wall. He followed it with his eyes, piecing together the implications. If the fan worked, the house was connected to some kind of power source. Lowering his Glock slightly, he relaxed for the first time since entering the house. If he could get the lights working, he'd have a safer base to search for supplies and answers. He headed downstairs, flipping switches in the kitchen. A dim, flickering light buzzed to life overhead. He let out a low breath. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The farmhouse's odd preservation now felt like a responsibility. He couldn't explain it, but leaving it in worse condition than he found it seemed wrong. With that thought, he began his search, moving carefully from room to room. In a study just off the living room, he found a stack of maps, one of which mirrored the one in his pack almost exactly. He unfolded it, comparing the faded markings with his own, noticing trails and landmarks that didn't appear on his copy. Some routes were circled in red, with dates scribbled beside them. He tucked the map away and turned to a shelf lined with books and journals. One journal caught his eye, a slim, leather-bound notebook with a child's handwriting scrawled across the first page, Clara's diary. Flipping it open, he skimmed the entries. The writing was uneven, some lines shaky, as if written in fear. Daddy says the sickness won't come here. He built the wall strong, and the wires will keep us safe. He's always right. Mom says not to look out the windows at night. I asked why, and she just looked sad. I don't understand. I saw a squirrel today. Daddy said they're bad now, like the changed people, but it just looked hungry. I gave it some bread. Don't tell. His grip on the diary tightened as he turned the pages. Clara described her family's isolation, her father's frantic efforts to maintain their sanctuary, and her growing confusion as the world outside crumbled. The entries became sporadic toward the end, the handwriting increasingly erratic. The lights are blinking again. Daddy says it's the wires protecting us. But I heard something upstairs last night. It wasn't Mom or Daddy. He closed the diary, a faint unease settling over him. The house wasn't just a sanctuary, it was hiding something. In a corner of the study, he found a small box, sleek and unmarked, its edges glowing faintly. A series of lights on its surface blinked red and green in a pattern that felt deliberate. It reminded him of an old Wi-Fi router, though its function was a mystery. He debated tinkering with it, but decided against it for now. If the house was still operational, tampering might risk shutting something critical down. He carried on, his curiosity leading him to a locked door at the end of the hall. It took a few solid shoves with his shoulder, but the door finally gave way, revealing a room unlike any other in the house. A massive satellite dish dominated the space, its surface gleaming under the faint glow of a single bulb overhead. Copper wires snaked across the walls, looping and tangling like veins feeding the machine. The air hummed faintly, the wires vibrating with energy. He stepped closer, running a hand along one of the wires. It was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly beneath his fingertips. The room felt alive, as though the satellite were the heart of the house, keeping it running against all odds. His eyes scanned the walls, noting diagrams and calculations pinned to a corkboard. Most of it was indecipherable, a mix of mathematical formulas and hand-drawn schematics. In one corner, a faded note caught his attention. It was scrawled hastily, the ink smudged. "Maintain the signal. They're listening." His gut twisted. Who was they? And what were they listening for? The sound of distant rustling reached his ears, pulling him out of his thoughts. He froze, his eyes darting to the door. The squirrels. They hadn't gone far. He backed out of the room, his mind racing. The farmhouse was more than it seemed, far more. But the night was waning, and the longer he stayed, the greater the risk of being discovered. He'd have to decide quickly, stay and dig deeper into the mystery, or leave before the forest's predators returned. The bathroom was small, claustrophobic even, but it was perfect. One way in, one way out. That was the rule, and he'd lived by it for years. He shoved the worn door closed, sliding the small bolt lock into place. Not much of a defense, but it bought time. And time was everything. A cracked mirror hung above the sink, catching slivers of his reflection in the moonlight slipping through the boarded window. His sharp eyes swept the room, tile floors, faded wallpaper peeling at the edges, and a bathtub littered with empty bottles of shampoo and soap. He pushed the useless clutter aside, clearing the counter to lay down his gear. His pack landed with a thud, its contents spilling onto the cold tile. Ammo. A knife, a half-eaten protein bar, and the journal. The leather cover was worn, the spine loose from years of use. He opened it with a kind of reverence, flipping past pages filled with looping cursive and smudged ink. His eyes landed on a fresh page, one he hadn't read before. January 14th. We're running low on everything. Dad says we need to ration harder. Sometimes I feel like it would be easier to leave, to take my chances outside. But Mom says this is where we're safe. This is where we survive. He ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. The edges of the page were torn, as though someone had gripped it too tightly. A distant creak echoed through the house. His head snapped up, every nerve on edge. He reached for his knife, his fingers brushing against its familiar handle. He waited, listening, but the silence pressed in again. He turned back to the journal. February 3rd. The water's gone bad. Mom says we can't drink it anymore. She's been boiling what she can, but the smell makes me sick. Dad hasn't come back yet. I'm scared he won't. The words blurred for a moment. He blinked, clearing his vision, and flipped to the next page. He wasn't sure why he kept reading. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was just a way to remember that the world hadn't always been this way. Another noise. His grip tightened on the knife, his breath steadying as he crouched low. One way in, one way out. If it came to it, he'd be ready.
Woo!